I'm Joe from As the Joe Flies,
And I'm Leslie from Trips with Tykes.
and welcome back to Disney Deciphered. So, I was recently on the Disney Treasure, amazing ship. Spoiler alert, now my favorite ship in the fleet. We're on a 7-night cruise, the longest time we've tied for the longest amount of time we've been on a Disney cruise. So, thought I would share 7 notable things about the Disney Treasure that will help you decide whether you want to sail on the Disney Treasure. Spoiler alert, you should want to if you're a Disney fan. Again, it's my favorite ship and I'm totally enamored with the ship. But before we get started, wanted to thank some new Patreon subscribers. Leslie, who do we got today?
Yes, today we're thanking Larry M. and Mika. If you want to support the podcast, go to patreon.com/Disney Deciphered, where you'll get ad-free listening, bonus content like our unfiltered episodes, and our real-time trip reports. We are increasing Patreon prices starting April 1st. So if you want to get in at the current rate, now is the time.
Also, shout out to listener Nate, who was on the cruise with me and said hello. Thank you so much, everybody, for your support over the years. All right, so we got a lot of stuff going on. We'll get right to it. I was on a 7-night sailing, the Disney Treasure, Eastern Caribbean, 3 days at sea, 2 days in the Virgin Islands, 1 day in Tortola, British Virgin Islands, 1 day St. Thomas, U.S. Virgin Islands, 1 day Castaway Cay. It was kind of cold on the Castaway Cay day. And the Treasure is alternating 7-night sailings between Eastern and Western Caribbean. I will be talking a little bit more in detail. I've scheduled to go on DCL podcast. The rumor is Steve Creasy, who is no longer a main host there, may be coming back for this, but we'll see. Actually, that might be out before you even hear this. So whatever. Check out DCL Podcast, our friends in the podcast space. All right, let's start with this, Leslie. The first thing that really stood out to me was the theming and the decor. This is the same bare bones as the Disney Wish, which ended up being a ship that I really enjoyed, despite a lot of Disney Cruise Line fans not liking it. I really enjoyed the Disney Wish, but I feel like the first thing that really stood out to me was the theming and decor of the Disney Treasure. I mean, what do you know? I assume you weren't like me. Since you weren't going to sail in it for a long time, you probably didn't avoid spoilers like I did. Like, what have you seen about the theming and decor so far?
So, I mean, this is the ship that I probably paid the most attention to because it seems the most up my alley in terms of that theming and decor. So, my sort of impression of it is that it really is focused on like deep Disney history parks fans and all of the, I mean, I know there's like the Jungle Cruise bar and Haunted Mansion and 20,000 Leagues Under the Sea and lots of that kind of stuff. So I have paid a lot of attention to this ship as being kind of like the best fit because my impression, I mean, I heard all the negative scuttlebutt about the Wish, and my impression was of the theming of that is it's really great if you have like a princess kid in the family, but a lot of families won't. Either your child is beyond that stage or wrong gender, because that does tend to appeal more to girls than to boys. My impression of the Wish was that it was a little bit more narrowly interested in terms of its focus, and that this might be a little bit more democratized, appeal to a wider swath of Disney fans. But maybe it's just it appeals to us, Joe.
It definitely appeals to us. I think it is a cruise ship with Disney parks fans in mind. I've seen some people say that the theming kind of isn't cohesive. I guess I am just a child because I do not care that it's not cohesive. I'm like, oh, Skipper Canteen, the Jungle Cruise lounge is here. The Haunted Mansion one is right next to it. Who cares? Like, this is awesome. I can keep switching from ride to ride. There's no, it's not like there's a frontier land or whatever. And I guess it could theoretically have been designed that way, but that didn't happen. I agree with you about the princess thing. What the Treasure has going for it is there's still a ton of princess stuff. Bibbidi Bobbidi Boutique, which my daughter did, very extensive, very nicely done, very centrally located and easy to get to this time. There are princesses everywhere around the ship besides even the Royal Gathering, which is the, you have to pre-book that. It's free, but you have to pre-book meeting 4 or 5 princesses. And so there's just princesses all over the place. So you still get your princesses if you have someone who really likes princesses, but then you have all this other more generic stuff. And then the adventure theme goes along with Pirate Night and stuff like that. So it all, I feel like, works really well together. And the other thing that my kids noticed that I didn't notice, and I'm assuming it's like this on the Wish as well, but it's like every couple of decks, the carpets and the theming actually change. So this is something that's different from the original ships. And partially this is because I was on the cruise for 7 nights. We got to notice more of these details. But the place that we were at, our fish extenders were actually scarab beetles, and we were in on like the Aladdin kind of decks. Like one of the carpets outside of the elevator bank was Agrabah. Another one was the Cave of Wonders. That was really cool. The deck above us was, I can't remember exactly the theming, but it was butterflies on the fish extenders. And then on the carpets, like in the hallways, so there's just little details. And then the one above that, it was like Finding Nemo. So I really enjoyed those details. It was like you can run around and look and like everything's different. And my son was like, the fish extenders are different, and I was like, no, they're not. They're all scarab beetles everywhere. And he's like, no, and he dragged me and proved me wrong. So just I thought they really knocked it out of the park. Captain Hook and Peter Pan on the aft of the ship, on the stern of the ship, that's really cool. Like, it's Rapunzel was cool too, I should say, but I really love that. So theming, decor, it's awesome. Oh, and then before I forget, the grand hall that you walk into, I love the green color of the carpets. Green is my favorite color, but it's like a darker green. The hall is huge. The chandelier is awesome. You can look 3 floors down, or from the 5th floor to the 3rd floor. There's that beautiful space in the, so it's just like everything with the Wish, but I feel like the trim is much nicer. It's like we went to the SE trim or whatever instead of the basic trim on your car. So love the theming of the decor. That was the first thing that stood out to me.
It looked amazing what I've seen that you posted on Instagram, and hopefully folks who are watching here on YouTube are seeing some pictures that you got from your cruise. So next, let's talk about the rooms. I mean, everybody knows I've only been on the Magic and the Wonder, which are the biggest rooms aboard the Disney Cruise Line's fleet. How were the room sizes and layout in terms of what you experienced?
So we did get a deluxe family ocean view with veranda. So the biggest room on the Treasure, I think it was 284 square feet. We got on and my wife was like, oh, these rooms, or we got 2 connecting rooms. She's like, oh, these rooms are so big. They feel so big. I did not tell her that we, on our last cruise, had the regular deluxe ocean view with veranda. So it wasn't the bigger version. So the rooms were actually bigger. If you compare this category, deluxe family, with deluxe family on, we were actually on the Magic, this one would actually be smaller. I think for function, they've lost a couple of things. Like, I think it's really clever just for space wise. Like for example, the trash can is built into the desk and stuff like that. It's like a little thing, but on the older ships, you have like a trash can that it's like free, like you can move it around. I actually prefer, even though I do think that the leather old trash can looks nicer, but I don't really care what my trash can looks like. I don't want to be in the way, and I like how they snuck it in there. So there's stuff like that. I feel like the storage space was cleverly put into the rooms. It does again feel like it was a lot of function over form. I'm okay with that because we needed the space. One of our staterooms had just the couch and the bunk, and the other had the pull down Murphy bed. The pull down Murphy bed was great. I honestly, being there, I was like, we did not need to get 2 rooms. It was nice to get 2 rooms, but we should have just squeezed into one, especially because as my kids get older, we may need that space. So I thought that deluxe family ocean view would have fit our family of 5, not comfortably, but we would have been okay. Like, it wouldn't have felt like a squeeze. The other thing is we booked a veranda on the bump out, so we got a little bit of extra space. So that was nice as well. And the room right next to us, which is just actually a category down, they have a huge veranda. I think that was 7578 or equivalent if you are looking for a just regular sized room with a bigger veranda. Now, Leslie, I think what really still stood out to me about the rooms, though, is, like I said, with the decor in general, they were really well done. I really enjoyed the artwork in there. One of the rooms was Aladdin themed, one was Pocahontas themed. There was cool artwork throughout. When you pull down, I don't know if you did this on the Magic, when your kids pulled down the bunk bed, did they see that like on the top there's, I think it's like a wish oriented message or something like that?
I can't remember what's there, but it's like all of the Disney sort of Murphy or pull down beds, there's always something behind the wall. So I'll have to look at photos to remember what it was.
Yeah, I think it's a dream is a wish your heart makes or something like that. Well, anyway, in the Aladdin room, it was unlimited power. I think itty bitty living space. I thought that was pretty funny. That's what was written on there. I thought that was cute. So just love the decor of the rooms in general. Obviously, they're like brand new, so they're clean. I know people have complained about how there's not a real refrigerator. It's like a beverage cooler thing. I didn't use that thing once, so I'm sure that's annoying if you want to keep stuff cold. But I just didn't use it. Like I had a thermos, so I would fill that up with Diet Coke and ice from the pool deck, and then I would be fine. I didn't need to cool anything down at all.
I mean, aren't beverage coolers in all of the Disney hotels now? And don't they essentially stay as cold as refrigerators in your experience? I don't know.
I don't know. I'm just remembering complaints people had about the Wish. I'm just pointing out that these complaints could still exist for the Treasure, but they never bothered me, so they don't bother me now on the Treasure. The other thing that I really like compared to the older classes of ships is it's a glass door in the bathroom shower. I really like that. I thought that was nice, kept things a little bit neater. And then, of course, Leslie, the beds. I guess my wife didn't like the beds as much as she liked them on the Dream because she didn't look up the beds when she got home. This time she got home and looked up the sheets that we were using, which I cannot tell. I could not tell you that they were any different from our sheets at home. But she's like, "Oh yeah, I got home and I looked up what kind of sheets they were. Apparently they're fret sheets." Leslie, this is like how not comprehending what she was talking about. We were like on our way back and she kept talking to me about fret sheets. And I was like, is she picking up the guitar? And I don't know about that. Not those kinds of frets. I think it's fret FRETTE sheets or something like that, starting at like $500 or something.
Yikes. Yikes. Well, glad to see Disney's not skipping in that department.
I still couldn't tell you why they were more comfortable, but she loved them. So she looked it up. Very happy with our rooms. All right, you touched on this a little bit, Leslie. There are 3 Disney themed lounges. Why don't you tell the people what they can expect lounge wise if they're on the Disney Treasure?
All right, so those are Haunted Mansion, Jungle Cruise themed, like a Skipper Canteen, and then a 20,000 Leagues Under the Sea. And are these all lounge? Are there any of these age limited in any way, shape, or form, like the Irish pub or the British pub is on the other ships?
I don't think they are, except for late at night and then during their adult only events. And I just realized, for those of you who are Patreon subscribers, in Disney Deciphered Unfiltered, I kept calling it Skipper Canteen. It's Skipper Society is the lounge name on the ship. Haunted Mansion Parlor is the name of the Haunted Mansion bar, and then the 20,000 of the Leagues Under the Sea lounge is called the Periscope Pub. And yeah, so they have this sign that will go out that it says 18 plus only. I wasn't there late at night to see, but I assume they put them out late at night. But Skipper Society, that is the equivalent of the Soul Cat Lounge on the Magic, or Tiana's Bayou, or no, the Bayou, I think is what it's called, on the Wonder. It's like near the restaurants and stuff like that. It's just like an open space kind of taking up in a hallway. Skipper Society is definitely open for all. People are walking through there all hours of the day. And Haunted Mansion Parlor, I think it's open all the time. And there's some really cool effects in the Haunted Mansion Parlor. I don't want to spoil too much, but the ghosts do visit at certain times and it can get pretty intense. And we got some drinks there. We lucked out. We ordered one of the kids' non-alcoholic drinks. They were out of the glow cubes, which, Leslie, I have more than I could ever need of those glow cubes. And so because of that, they only charged us the cost of a Shirley Temple, which, in case you want a cheap drink at the Haunted Mansion Parlor, is only $2.75. So order a Shirley Temple and you will be fine. I wasn't too impressed with the Haunted Mansion Parlor's cocktails. I think if I went back again, I would probably just get like a regular cocktail. But the spaces are amazing and just what you would want as a theme parks fan. And I really loved the 20,000 Leagues Under the Sea one, Periscope Pub. There are some other more generic spaces. There's technically a Lion King lounge, but it's just more Lion King decorated. That one's called Sarabi. And then there's a couple of other lounges. The one downside about the lounges is they tend to be a little bit smaller on the other ships than on the other ships. And A downside for some people, not for me, but they're spread out all over the ship. There's no like one adult zone. I don't mind that. I like that they're spread out. But the issue with them being a little smaller only happens when they are having things like trivia, especially when they're having millennial Gen X 90s music trivia between the two dinings. That was pretty rad. It did feel like I was in a bar when I was in my 20s, except for we were all in our mid 40s and quite old as we were singing along.
Yeah, are there any other spaces that they're holding trivia in? Because I think about, at least on the Wonder and the Magic, there was that lounge, not a lounge, where they had karaoke.
D Lounge.
D lounge,
The D
yeah,
Lounge.
exactly.
Yeah.
Is there a space like that that's not themed? Because I'm surprised that they're trying to that these are smaller, because I've seen Soul Cat Lounge like completely packed to the gills, and if this is smaller than that and it has the theming, like wow.
Yeah, I mean, I was standing for some of the trivias that I played, and so that was I mean, I guess that was annoying. I was still wanted to play trivia though, so I stood there. Sarabi is the biggest lounge that they use for trivia. The tricky thing about that is there's like a balcony, which is really useful because they do shows and stuff in there. So it's really useful for that. But it's like weird with trivia. We did bingo in there as well. And so they, they have cast members. In bingo, of course, since there's more stuff going on, they have cast members up on the second level. I'm not sure how they would do that with trivia. So it's a little bit of a miss. But overall, I mean, if it's like 3 different lounges with these 3 themings versus 2 with only 2, like I'll take the 3. I really enjoyed it. In this case, I'll take quantity over quality. I mean, they're quality lounges, but I'll take, I don't know you know what I'm saying.
Got it, Joe. All right. Well,
what is English?
we're getting punchy. We're recording a lot in a single day here, so peek behind the scenes. All right.
Yeah, good point. Let's take a quick break, and then we'll come back with the next 4. All right, we've gathered ourselves and we are ready to be professional podcasters once again. The next thing that really stood out to me was the entertainment on board. And I'm not even talking about the Broadway shows. The Broadway shows are great. Seize the Adventure is on the Wish. Beauty and the Beast is also on the Dream and maybe on another ship. So, I've seen both of those. Didn't go to those, actually. Moana, amazing. Really cool how they did it. Still having some inaugural season kinks that they need to work out. The spotlight wasn't working like perfectly. Those Broadway shows are fine. But when I say entertainment on the ship, that's not what I'm talking about. I think the best way I can say it, Leslie, is there's like always something to do. There's always characters to meet. There's always like shows going on. So what they've done differently on the Treasure, because of the adventure theme, they have 2 dedicated performers. They're called Sage and Coriander, and they do all sorts of things. So they do a jungle cruise. I don't know how to explain it. They take like tape and use tape in the Grand Hall and make boat shapes, right? Or rope or something. And then they have kids sit inside it and adults. And then they go on like a jungle cruise and they're just like talking, they're just talking through it. So they just so that's an example of one of the things they do. They do this really fun thing, which is called Choose Wisely. They go through all the Indiana Jones movies, but the 2 of them are just acting it out. So they play all the roles in this abbreviated version. Really appreciated that they didn't try to do the accent for Short Round. So thank you for that, Sage and Coriander. That was good. It's 2025. But that was fun too, because you can choose, they give you 2 choices. And if you choose the wrong one, they die and then they reset and they do it again. So Sage and Coriander, they were all around the ship the whole entire time. So that was always happening. And then, like I mentioned, there's all these different lounges and spaces to use. But Leslie, the thing that really stood out to me is more than any other ship, it feels like they really created, and I don't know if it's because it was February break and we are completely full vessel, but they really made sure that the characters were out and about at non-designated times. The story that really stands out to me is, first of all, we met like 5 characters this way. Adventure Minnie, she was just wandering around, and so I saw her, took a picture with her. I saw Daisy on one night, ran into Mickey another time. Princess Tiana, I was waiting in line for guest services one day. Princess Tiana was just like hanging out around there and people taking pictures. There's like no lines when these characters are wandering around. And I think the coolest thing is they wander around as if they are guests on the Disney Treasure, to the point that my wife and I, we were taking a walk. We were on deck 5 in the Grand Hall, and we looked down at the balcony on deck 4, and there was a couple leaning over the balcony, just observing what was going on deck 3, like what was going on below. It was Aladdin and Jasmine. If I didn't know better, I would think people were just like cosplaying, because Aladdin and Jasmine were just hanging on the balcony. Nobody was talking to them. No one even noticed that they were there. Eventually, like it took 2 minutes, 2 full minutes. They were just standing there. I was like, what are they even talking about? Like, I don't even know what, because they must have to talk in character in case someone comes behind them. Finally, someone tapped them on the back and they started taking pictures. I mean, I thought that was real Disney magic, just to have these characters wander around. It felt a little bit Disneyland like, but I do feel like at Disneyland, people like just flock when they see the characters walking around. These characters were, for some reason, they just looked like they were guests. It's like they were famous guests on the ship, and people would just take pictures with them every once in a while.
That's awesome. I mean, did it, because there were so many characters, did it make the lines for the characters that were kind of like the photo meet and greets shorter? Did people like have character like saturation as a result of this?
Yeah, so that's why I wonder if Stitch came out when we were coming back from Castaway Cay. That's why I wonder if it was because it was such a crowded vessel, because Stitch's meet and greet. So one thing I learned is that these meet and greets, they're scheduled for 15 minutes. That means you have 15 minutes to get in line. And people will line up before, and people will line up at the end of 15 minutes. But they'll run the meet and greet until everyone who got in that line in the 15 minutes gets through. Stitch was still meeting on his meet and greet on like day 2 or 3, when, like, you know, the character lines die down as the cruise goes on. On day 2 or 3, Stitch's character meet and greet, I was there when he started, and I came back an hour and 10 minutes later, and he was seeing his last guest. So those lines got pretty long. And so I feel like this was a way to make things shorter. I mean, the time I saw Daisy, it was just so random. Like, my son and I went to deck 4, the promenade deck, because he wanted to watch us dock at Castaway Cay. And there was only maybe 12 people total on the deck. And then Daisy just came out. She took pictures with all of us. It's just so random, so fun. It was awesome. But just so much entertainment, so much to do on board at all times. Ended up not relaxing as much as I should have. It ended up being a little forced march of happiness-y, Leslie.
Yeah, no, I know the feeling. I remember, at least on my last Disney cruise, by the second to last day, I was really grateful when there was like a gap in the schedule. Like, there was nothing on the calendar that I wanted to attend, and I finally could just like sit by the pool and read my book. But it's very easy to overschedule, and it sounds like this ship is even more jam-packed with things going on. So it's a blessing and a curse for sure. All right, well, what did you think about the dining?
Loved the dining. I mean, the food was great on the Wish, and I really liked Arendelle. Now, 1923, the same. Worlds of Marvel, the same, but they have an extra show, which is not a show, which I actually appreciated. Like, these shows, like, there's too much going on. So the second night of Worlds of Marvel was much more muted, so really appreciated that. But the star of the dining, and possibly my favorite dining establishment, main dining in all of the Disney fleet, is Coco, the Coco restaurant. It is awesome. Number one, very importantly, I don't know why Disney uses all these weird breads for their main dining. Like, just give us plain rolls, Disney. Like, I don't need this random marble bread with pepper dip or whatever like they give us World's Marble. Anyway, doesn't matter, because at Coco, they just give you tortilla chips and salsa. Our kids went nuts on those. Like, I had to fight these children to get some tortilla chips and salsa. So that was cool at Coco. But the menus were great there. But overall, the ambiance was, I like Arendelle, but I'm not a huge, I think it's the same thing. Like, Arendelle is going to appeal more to people who are into Frozen. I feel like Coco feels more like a generic Mexican restaurant, but in like the best way, in like a Disney authentic way. I'm not going to say it's like an authentic Mexican restaurant, but it's like a Disney authentic way. They have the lanterns running across the top. That's beautiful. There's light effects that they use. And then the mariachi band is perfection. Like, it's like one of the, I like them singing the Arendelle songs. They were fine. But the first night they sing traditional Mexican songs, and that was great. And they tell some of the history behind it. And then the second night, it's like all Coco stuff. It's a different story. It's not Coco, but it's like all Coco stuff. It was just so good. I could eat there every night. I set it up so 1923 was on my dining rotation 3 times. I would think about going to Coco 3 times just for the ambiance, even though I know on one of the nights is the pirate night, so they're not going to be playing. The mariachis and them aren't going to be there on Pirate Night. But yeah, they were so good musically. They all sang really well. It was a lot of fun. Amazing restaurant. Churros as well.
Ooh, you had me at churros. Okay, did you do any of the upcharge dining experiences?
Yeah, I talked about it pretty extensively on our Patreon trip report, and I'm not going to talk about it here because it doesn't appeal to everyone. But Enchante, my short version is I liked it better than Remy. It's a little more expensive than Remy. That's not why I liked it better, but I thought the experience overall was just a touch above Remy. Our server, Hannah, who is from the UK, she was amazing. Really loved her. She was really great at what she did. It was an excellent meal. The food was really good, just regular tasting menu stuff. And so it is now, I recently went to Takumite. I probably give Enchante a slight edge because they didn't make me eat all these mushrooms that I had to eat when I was at Takumite. But they're about the same for me. My wife got a wine pairing for the first time in over a decade, and all the wines that they chose were really excellent and reminded us of back. I forgot, Leslie, that before we had kids, we used to drive around wine countries in Europe and stuff like that. We can't do that anymore. And so they had we talked with the sommelier about places that we visited, and we actually had some wine from it. They didn't do it special for us. It was just happened to be on the menu. So that was awesome. So we had a really great time there. And I like the ambiance in Enchante better than Remy because it's brighter. Definitely has solidified that I'm never going to Victoria and Albert's again for the rest of my life. If I'm going to book a Disney cruise and go to Enchante instead of go to Victoria and Albert's if I want a fancy tasting menu at Disney.
All right. Yeah, definitely doesn't hurt the pocketbook quite as much. So, how was the dining in terms of space? Did it feel crowded at all? I know that was an issue on the Wish.
Yeah, I think it's still an issue. Again, super crowded ship. I do think, I mentioned it with the rooms. I do think that it just feels like ever so slightly they've squeezed in a little bit more people for every square foot. And you can feel that, especially in 1923, the back of my chair was maybe 2 feet away from the next table. So it was pretty close. They were squeezing in behind me. And then where you really feel it is when you are lining up to get into the restaurant as they're bringing you to your tables and your hand sanitizing and all that. It's just a huge line. You can feel the crowds then, and you can feel them a bit while you're in the restaurant. And that is where I felt the crowds the most on the whole entire cruise, actually, because of all the entertainment, because of all the different spaces, unless you're in a crowded bar, which crowded bars sort of are supposed to feel like crowded bars anyway. It just felt like there was a lot of space. There's a lot of times where it was just, like I said, when I was on that promenade deck, it was just me and 2 other families. But at dining, it could get pretty crowded. So just something to bear in mind. If you don't want to wait in that long line and you don't mind being one of the last ones to eat, just show up 10 minutes later and the line dies down by then.
Got it. Let's switch gears to another place that I know can get crowded on Disney ships, the pools. What was your experience there?
Yeah, so I think in general, this Wish class ships have been designed so that there's more pool area for the kids. There's more pools, but some of them are not that deep. So there's only 2 of the deeper pools, but still there's more options for the kids. So even though those pools get crowded, it's not as bad for the kids. I think that has come at the sacrifice of some adult pool space. There's only 1 hot tub. The adult pool is beautiful. It's like an infinity pool on the aft of the ship, which is amazing. But I do think those adult spaces get quite busy during the day. Go during dusk or towards the end of the day. They're a lot quieter then. But the pool's not much different than the Disney Wish. We really like them, but I guess the best thing I can say about the pools on both the Treasure and the Wish is that we actually go to them. Whereas on the other ships, we kind of avoid them, except for at the downtimes because they're too crazy. The Aquamouse has added a 3rd show. So there's a story every time you take the Aquamouse. They've added a 3rd one. That was fun. On a 7-night cruise, we definitely found that if we went at around 6:30, 6:45 between the 2 dinings, there was never a line. We were walking on, we were riding twice without having to get off. It was freezing, but that was an easy way to do it. And I think overall, I re-listened to our Disney Wish episode, and I said at the time, I think I liked the Aqueduct better. I think I like the Aquamouse better because it's fun to have a story and not just randomly go on a water slide. And I don't know if the Wish did this. It didn't do this when we were there, but the Disney Treasure, as you are watching the story, stuff is like squirting at you as part of the story. So I thought that was pretty cool and a nice little engineering touch there. Imagineering, excuse me.
All right. Well, let's talk about the elephant that's always in the room, money. How much extra did you spend on board the Treasure, and was it any different than your previous DCL experiences?
Yeah. So for our seventh and final thing that we're going to talk about the Treasure, I do need to say, because back in episode 335, we talked about comparing taking a Disney parks trip and a Disney cruise trip. And I remember distinctly in that episode and many other episodes, I've said you can very easily prepay your gratuities, get onto a Disney cruise, and get off without paying anything else. That is, let me be clear, that is not true on the Disney Treasure and on any 7-night cruise, really, especially if you're a Disney fan. One, on a 7-night cruise, it's like so much time, you're going to end up spending money. Number two, as a Disney fan, like I said, the lounges were good enough that they made me want to drink. So I ended up spending more money there than I would have expected. And there was just like so much stuff to do, so much stuff to experience. Some of it was included with the cost of the cruise fare, but some of it was an upcharge, whether it be drinks or experiences. I did end up playing bingo, which regrets. I have a few, but now I know how bingo works. Leslie, I didn't even realize that bingo, it's not just 5 in a line anymore. They do shapes and stuff like that. I had no idea. Yeah, I know. Crazy. Yeah. Okay. Thank you. Like I thought
mean,
they thought I was they thought I was a weird one for not understanding.
I mean, I've done like the X or whatever. They do something more complicated than that. I don't know.
No, it's like small frame, and
I guess
don't
I've seen that
And then
before.
they had one that
Yeah.
looked like a kite. Was like,
No, I've never done the
anyway.
kite. I've done the frames. So
So I mean, I think this is the first time I've ever played bingo for money in my entire life. But I guess they got to keep it interesting. But yeah, there was a lot of. I mean, there's just so much to do on the ship, and as a Disney fan, like there's a lot of Disney stuff that you're gonna want to experience that it's really hard to get off the ship without spending a decent amount of money. Oh, the merchandise was awesome too. And then we were on the inaugural sailing too, so you want to buy the inaugural merchandise. So we ended up spending like we spent more than we spent in Alaska. So, you know, yes, Leslie mouthed wow for those of you who are not watching on video. But yeah, so probably need to be smarter about that next time that we go. We probably need to take our own advice and just have a Disney gift card and just use that. But yeah, that's what I want to say though. On a 7-night cruise on the Disney Treasure, you will incur onboard expenses. Make sure you budget for that. Unless you are like, I think if you've listened long enough, you know I'm not that disciplined, but you've got to be like incredibly disciplined if you're a Disney fan to get off that ship without spending extra money.
you've been warned. All right, Joe. Well, that's a lot of information about the Treasure. I am really excited to go on it one of these days. Don't have it booked. Do have the Destiny booked, which is, has some overlapping features. Whether I will take it is another question. So let's close it out with our traditional Disney do or don't.
So my Disney do is leave cast compliments for the crew. I don't know if this is because this was the inaugural crew or whatever, but I want to say on a 7-night cruise, I had one, I wouldn't even say it was a negative interaction, but it was like one not amazing interaction with a crew member. And that was more because she made a mistake. And I didn't even realize it until after I was done. So it seemed like a good interaction at the time. I had amazing interactions with all the crew members. Some were even better than others. And so 2 in particular stood out to me: Jason, our server, and then Juju, who was part of the entertainment team, but was also not a friend of Pluto. But what do you call the people who are walking around with Pluto?
Oh yeah, I don't know the name of that, but like the character
Yeah, it's the friend of the
handlers.
friend of Pluto. Yeah. Or whatever. And he was really awesome when he did that. Like one thing that the character handlers did that I haven't seen in the parks in a long time, or not to this extent, is they like spoke for the characters. Like they spoke, like in third person, but like in their voice. The example is like Juju with Pluto was like, "Oh, Pluto's a good boy," and he was like, petting his nose, and he's like, "Oh, Pluto likes you," stuff like that. I'm not as good as they are. I can't recreate that, but he was awesome. Jason, our server, was awesome. So I was like, I don't know how to do cast compliments because it's not in the app like it is at Disney World. So here I am telling you, Disney do do leave a cast compliment. You can Google for the email address, but it's dcl.guest.communications@disneycruise.com. Leave a note. I wrote them a note about them, and someone got back to me within 3 hours, and they were like, thank you for this, and blah, 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 Disney speak. We'll make sure that they, get this in their file, get commended or whatever. That's not what they said, but deep down, like, we know that's what that's saying. So, I mean, even down to, we had to go to the medical center, even down to the doctor, he was great too. So just really impressed overall with the entire cast and crew of the Disney Treasure. Leave a cast compliment if you are so inclined.
All right, Joe, sounds like a great trip.
Well, if you have any questions about the Disney Treasure, you can email us disneydeciphered@gmail.com or find us on social media, Disney Deciphered. Leslie, where can people find your work on the internet?
Tripswithtykes.com is the blog. At Trips with Tykes everywhere on social media. Joe, where can folks find you?
You can find me at AsJoeFlies on social media. If you're looking to plan a Disney trip, you can reach out Joseph Chung at travelmation.net with an M, and I'd be happy to help you out as your travel advisor. All right, that does it for this episode. I know it's a little bit longer, but thank you everyone for listening. And thank you, Leslie, for taking the time to talk to me. And I will see you probably rebooking your Disney Destiny trip 6 more times.
Thanks, Joe.